Welcome back to another explainer. Have you ever paused mid-count and realized just how absolutely bizarre the English language can be? Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're going to look at some seriously quirky anomalies in English numbers. Specifically, we're uncovering these hidden ghosts of an ancient counting system that honestly still haunts our everyday math. Let's figure out why our counting rules suddenly just stop working and what that actually tells us about our history.
So why don't we say 1-teen and 2-teen? Seriously, take a second and think about it. When we count in the 20s or 30s, our language makes perfect logical sense, right? We say 21, 22, 23. The pattern is completely predictable. You state the base of 10, and you add the single digit. Simple. Yet when we hit that very first set of teens, the early numbers break the pattern entirely. I mean, why on earth do 10, 11, and 12 get their own unique standalone names?
Look at numbers like 14, 16, 17, 18, 19. These perfectly combine the base number with teen, which, by the way, is just a historical way of saying 10. But then we have our big linguistic rule breakers, 11, 12, and frankly, 13 is a bit of an oddity too. Contrasting these clearly patterned numbers against our linguistic anomalies sets up the entire foundation of our investigation today. Because these anomalies aren't just random accidents, they're literally linguistic fossils.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is if we trace the word 11 back to its Old English roots, we find the word in Laofen. In early Germanic compounds, n means 1, and the Laofen part comes from a root meaning left or left over. So get this, 11 literally translates to 1 left over after counting to 10. And 12? In Old English, it was twelfen, meaning 2 left over. It turns out ancient English speakers were quite literally telling us what happens when you run out of fingers. You have 1 left or you have 2 left.
That brings us to our next anomaly. Why is it 13 instead of 3-teen? The numbers 14 through 19 follow the rules so nicely. Well, it turns out 13 actually started out trying to follow the rules just like 14 and 16. In Old English, the word for 3 was 3-o, pronounced sort of like 3-o. So 13 originally started as that Old English word plus 10. It really was, for all intents and purposes, 3-teen. So what happened to scramble the spelling and pronunciation that we use today?
The answer is a fascinating linguistic phenomenon called metathesis. Simply put, it's the everyday accident of human pronunciation where, over centuries, 2 sounds in a word just swap places. It completely alters how a word is said and spelled. People just start saying things a little lazily, a consonant and a vowel get flipped around in everyday speech, it catches on, and suddenly the dictionary literally has to change to keep up with how people are actually talking.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what happened to the number 3. Over the centuries, metathesis caused the R sound and the vowel sound to switch places in everyday speech. So 13 slowly morphed into 13. And we see the exact same thing with the ordinal number. What used to be thrid swapped sounds to become third. So 13 actually is following the base 10 pattern we see in 14 and 15. It's just wearing a clever little disguise that metathesis gave it over hundreds of years.
But let's circle back to our biggest anomalies. If 11 and 12 just mean 1 leftover and 2 leftovers after you count to 10, why stop there? Why didn't they call 13 3 leftovers? This prompts the question, why does the linguistic leftover pattern abruptly halt right at 12 and suddenly switch to the predictable teen pattern at 13? This sudden shift in how we name our numbers is, without a doubt, the smoking gun of our entire linguistic mystery today.
The answer lies in the duodecimal system. This is a method of reckoning or counting by 12s and powers of 12. Long before we globally standardized on base 10, counting strictly by tens, ancient Germanic tribes were heavily utilizing a hidden base 12 counting structure right alongside it. It was a massive part of how they understood and divided their world. Because of that deep history, modern English actually retains a shadow number system based on 12. These weird number words, 11, 12, they're actually the ghosts of an ancient Germanic duodecimal system living right inside our modern language. We count by tens today in almost everything we do, sure, but our vocabulary still perfectly remembers a time when 12 was the absolute king of the numbers.
So the crucial point is this: why did our ancestors love 12 so much? Well, from a purely mathematical standpoint, base 10 actually has a huge disadvantage for practical everyday life. 10 is only cleanly divisible by 2 and 5, but 12, a base 12 system is beautifully divisible by 2, 3, 4, and 6. If you're an ancient farmer or a merchant dividing weights, measures, food, or drink, a duodecimal system is far, far superior. You can easily cut things into halves, thirds, and quarters without having to deal with messy fractions. In fact, this structural showdown between base 10 and base 12 was historically significant long after the Anglo-Saxons. It was so hotly debated that in an 1821 report, then Secretary of State John Quincy Adams actually weighed the merits of the duodecimal division against the decimal one. Even at the highest levels of the US government in the 19th century, they were having serious, intense debates over whether they should embrace the mathematical advantages of 12/10. It's wild to think about.
In older Germanic legal texts, this base 12 logic was so deeply embedded, they actually had to explicitly distinguish between a common hundred, which was 100, and a great hundred, which was 120. Old English numbering literally ran its counting through 12 cycles before shifting its wording. They used terms like hund endliafontig for 110 and hund 12dig for 120. Honestly, if that base 12 language had fully survived into modern English, we wouldn't say 110, we'd say eleventy.
Now, does that word eleventy ring a bell? Fans of J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy, The Lord of the Rings, will instantly recognize this. At the very beginning of the story, Bilbo Baggins famously celebrates his 111th birthday, which is joyously and formally referred to in the text as his 111st birthday.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because Tolkien wasn't just making up cute fantasy words. As a renowned Oxford professor of Old English, he knew exactly what he was doing. He took that real historical Old English word endliafontig and brilliantly resurrected it in its modernized form, eleventy, to flesh out the rustic historical feel of Hobbit culture in the Shire. He used real linguistic ghosts to make his fantasy world feel authentically ancient.
And Tolkien didn't stop there. During his famous farewell speech at that same birthday party, Bilbo actually offends his guests by referring to them as a gross, because there were exactly 144 hobbits in attendance. A gross is exactly 12 12s. This is yet another ghostly remnant of the duodecimal base 12 system surviving as a special word in our language, and Tolkien used it to absolute perfection to showcase hobbit counting traditions.
Alongside eleventy, Tolkien consistently gave his hobbits modernized Old English names for everyday things. Words like smeal for a hobbit hole and matham for an old object. The linguistic heritage of the Shire connects directly back to the very real Anglo-Saxon history of the base 12 system we've been investigating throughout this explainer. It's real-world language history hidden in plain sight inside one of the most famous books of all time.
Which brings us to a final, provocative thought. Should we have listened to John Quincy Adams and fully embraced the base 12 ghosts in our language? Just imagine how much easier cutting a pizza into thirds or managing fractions in construction would be if our entire math system was built around 12. Every time you buy a dozen eggs, measure a 12-inch foot, or look at a 12-hour clock, you are interacting with the ancient leavings of the Anglo-Saxons. It certainly makes you reconsider the strict base 10 world we live in every single day, doesn't it? Thanks for learning with me today, and keep questioning the history behind the things we take for granted.